In the quiet corners of twilight, where shadows grow long and gentle, there exists a story as old as starlight itself, a story that whispers across centuries like wind through bamboo leaves, carrying with it the fragrance of jasmine and the wisdom of ages. Tonight, dear friend, as you settle into the soft embrace of evening, we journey together to a time when the world was younger, when a prince walked away from golden palaces to sit beneath a tree and discover the deepest truths of human existence. This is not just a story of one man's awakening, but a gentle invitation to your own inner peace. Before we begin this sacred journey together, if these calming wisdom stories bring you comfort in the quiet hours, feel free to subscribe to our little sanctuary of peace. Give this video a like as soft as a prayer flag in the breeze, and gently share in the comments where in the world you're listening from tonight. Are you perhaps watching moonlight dance across your window? Or listening to rain tapping its ancient rhythm on your roof? Each of us carries our own corner of this vast, beautiful world into this shared moment of stillness. Picture, if you will, cherry blossoms drifting on an evening breeze, each petal a small meditation on letting go. Imagine a solitary monk walking a forest path, his footsteps so light they barely disturb the moss, his presence so peaceful that even the crickets pause their singing to listen. See the thin curl of incense rising in perfectly still air, each wisp carrying our intentions toward something greater than ourselves. This is our invitation tonight, to release the weight of the day, to let go of tomorrow's concerns, and to rest in this moment where wisdom meets wonder, where ancient truths cradle modern hearts. The Buddha's story is not distant history. It lives in every breath you take, in every moment you choose peace over chaos, stillness over noise. So breathe deeply now, let your shoulders fall away from your ears, and allow yourself to drift into a time when awakening was as natural as dawn breaking over the Ganges, when truth was discovered not in books or temples, but in the simple act of sitting still and watching the mind become clear as morning dew on lotus petals. The story begins not with fanfare, but with silence, the kind of profound quiet that existed before the first word was spoken, before the first question was asked. In that space where all possibilities rest, like seeds waiting for the gentle rain of attention. What is the sound of peace before thought arises? What remains when we release our grip on everything we believe we are? These questions float through the evening air like moths drawn to the flame of ancient wisdom. And tonight, we follow them into the forest of contemplation. Long before the Buddha became known to the world, before his name was whispered in monasteries or carved into temple stones, there was simply a young man walking through the gardens of his father's palace, pausing at the edge of what he knew, sensing something vast and unnamed calling from beyond the walls that had protected and confined him. Imagine, if you can, the quality of silence that must have existed in those pre-dawn hours, when Prince Siddhartha would slip away from his sleeping chambers, drawn by an invisible thread toward the unanswered questions that lived in his heart. The palace grounds would be draped in that particular darkness before dawn, where shadows hold their breath, and the world exists in perfect suspension between what was and what might be. In that liminal space, walking barefoot on cool stone paths, bordered by night-blooming jasmine, perhaps he paused by a fountain where water fell in steady, hypnotic drops. Perhaps he watched the koi moving like liquid thoughts beneath the surface, their movements purposeless and perfect, and wondered what it would feel like to live with such natural grace, such unconscious wisdom. The questions that arose in those quiet moments were not the kind that demand immediate answers, but rather the gentle, persistent inquiries that seem to grow from the silence itself. Why does beauty fade? Why do we cling to what cannot last? What lies beneath this constant movement of desire and fear, pleasure and pain? What would remain if we stopped running toward tomorrow and away from yesterday? These were not intellectual puzzles to be solved, but lived mysteries to be experienced. Like watching smoke rise from a stick of sandalwood and wondering where it goes when it disappears, or listening to the space between raindrops and sensing something infinite in that emptiness. Night after night, season after season, the young prince found himself drawn to these moments of questioning, not seeking to grasp answers, but learning to rest in the fertile darkness of not knowing. Like a gardener who plants seeds and then waits with patient faith for what will emerge, he began to cultivate a relationship with mystery itself. The palace library held countless scrolls containing the wisdom of ages, the accumulated knowledge of sages and scholars, yet the questions that called to him most deeply seemed to arise not from books, but from the wordless teachings of morning mist dissolving into sunlight, from the way leaves let go of branches when their time had come, from the profound contentment of watching clouds reshape themselves across an endless sky. There is something deeply comforting in recognizing that the greatest spiritual teachers throughout history have begun not with answers, but with questions. Not with certainty, but with a willingness to not know. Not with solutions, but with an opening of the heart to life's fundamental mystery. As you rest here in this quiet evening hour, perhaps you can feel the resonance of these ancient questions in your own heart. What would it feel like to approach your own deepest wonderings, not as problems to be solved, but as invitations to rest more deeply in the mystery of being alive? What opens in you when you release the need to have everything figured out and instead allow yourself to be held by the vast, patient wisdom that exists in simply being present to what is? The young prince, walking those moonlit paths, was learning the first great teaching, that wisdom begins not with knowing, but with a quality of loving attention that can rest peacefully in the midst of uncertainty, like a clear lake that reflects the sky without needing to capture it. Asterisk, asterisk, in the gentle rhythm of breath meeting breath, in the spaces between heartbeats where eternity rests, we find the timeless teachings that flowed through the Buddha's awakening, like water finding its way to the sea. These are not distant philosophical concepts, but living wisdoms that speak to the tender places in our modern hearts, where we long for peace amidst the endless motion of our days. Picture, if you will, the Buddha sitting beneath the Bodhi tree in those final hours before dawn, not as a statue frozen in perfection, but as a human being who had walked the same paths of suffering and searching that we know so well. His teachings arise not from abstract thought, but from the intimate understanding of what it means to be human, to love and lose, to hope and fear, to reach for happiness and find it slipping through our fingers like morning mist. The first teaching that emerges from this deep knowing is as gentle as rain on thirsty earth. Life contains suffering, yes, but suffering is not our enemy. It is our teacher, pointing always toward what we have not yet learned to release. Like a thorn in the paw that teaches us where healing is needed, our pain becomes a compass pointing toward liberation. Imagine a mother watching her child take their first steps. She knows the child will fall, and her heart aches with this knowing, yet she does not try to prevent all falling. Instead, she creates a safe space for learning, understanding that the temporary pain of falling is part of the joy of walking. This is how the Buddha saw our human struggles, not as punishments or failures, but as natural parts of learning to move through life with grace. The second teaching flows like honey from ancient trees. This suffering we experience has a root, and that root is our grasping. Not our loving, not our caring, but our clinging, our desperate attempt to hold on to pleasure and push away pain, to make permanent what is naturally impermanent, to find solid ground in a world that is fluid as water, ever-changing as clouds. Consider how a river flows around rocks without resistance, how trees bend with storms instead of breaking, how seasons change without fighting the transition. There is a natural intelligence in this non-resistance, a wisdom that the Buddha discovered in his own heart and recognized as the fundamental principle of peace. The third teaching arrives soft as candlelight in darkness. There is a way beyond. Suffering, a path that leads not away from life, but deeper into its essential nature. This is not about escaping our humanity, but about learning to dance with it so gracefully that pain becomes compost for wisdom, and struggle transforms into strength. And the fourth teaching unfolds like a map drawn in starlight. The path itself has 8 gentle aspects, like 8 friends walking together toward home. Right understanding, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration, not as rigid rules, but as companions for the journey, each one supporting the others, like musicians in a symphony of awakening. But what makes these ancient teachings so alive for our modern hearts is not their perfection, but their practicality. They speak to the office worker sitting in traffic, watching their breath instead of their frustration. They whisper to the parent holding a crying child at 3 a.m., finding patience in the recognition that this too shall pass. They comfort the heart that has loved and lost, reminding us that the capacity to love is never lost, only transformed. These teachings are not about becoming someone different, but about recognizing who we have always been beneath the layers of conditioning and fear. Like an archaeologist carefully brushing away dirt to reveal an ancient treasure, the Buddha's path helps us uncover the peace that has always lived within us, waiting patiently to be remembered. In the quiet sanctuary of this evening hour, feel how these ancient wisdoms settle into your bones like warm tea on a cold night. They ask nothing of you but presence, require nothing but a willingness to be gentle with yourself as you learn. They promise not to eliminate all pain, but to teach you how to hold pain with such compassion that it becomes a doorway to deeper love. The Buddha's teachings are like a lullaby sung by generations of mothers to their children, carrying within their melody the accumulated wisdom of what it means to live with an open heart in a world that often seems closed, to find peace in a world that often seems chaotic, to trust in love in a world that often seems fearful. As your breathing deepens and your body settles into the embrace of rest, allow these gentle teachings to cradle you like the arms of infinite compassion, knowing that wisdom is not something you must achieve, but something you are invited to remember, as natural as breathing, as effortless as sleep itself. Long ago, in a monastery nestled between rolling hills where morning mist clung to ancient pine trees like prayers made visible, there lived an old monk whose name has been forgotten by history, but whose story lives on in the whispered wisdom, passed from teacher to student, like firelight passing from candle to candle. His face was weathered as driftwood, carved by years of sitting in meditation, until the boundaries between himself and the silence had grown as thin as rice paper. The younger monks would often find him in the pre-dawn hours, seated beneath a gnarled Bodhi tree in the monastery garden, so still that birds would sometimes mistake him for part of the landscape and rest upon his shoulders. One autumn evening, as chrysanthemums bloomed like small suns in the fading light, and the air carried the scent of burning leaves and distant rain, a young monk approached this elder with a question that had been troubling his heart like a stone in a shoe. "Venerable teacher," the young monk said, bowing with the reverence reserved for those who have learned to wear wisdom lightly, "I have been practicing meditation for 3 years now, following my breath, watching my thoughts, trying to find the peace that the Buddha spoke of. Yet my mind remains restless as a caged bird, and I fear I am failing on the path." The old monk's eyes opened slowly, like doors to a room filled with warm lamplight. He smiled with the gentleness of someone who had asked this same question many lifetimes ago and remembered the ache of seeking. "Come," he said, his voice soft as wind through bamboo, "walk with me to the river." Together, they made their way down the familiar path, worn smooth by countless feet over countless seasons. The river, when they reached it, was running full from recent rains, carrying fallen leaves like small boats toward some distant ocean. The water caught the last light of day and held it briefly before letting it go. The old monk picked up a smooth stone from the riverbank and held it in his palm. "What do you see?" he asked. "A stone, teacher. Gray and ordinary." "Yes," the monk nodded, and gently tossed the stone into the flowing water. It disappeared with barely a splash, swallowed by the current. "And now? Now I see nothing. The stone is gone, is it?" The old monk's eyes twinkled like stars reflecting in still water. "Or has it simply joined something larger than itself?" They stood in comfortable silence, watching the river flow past them with the patience of something that has nowhere to go but exactly where it is going. A heron stood motionless in the shallows, so present to its purpose that fish swam near, its feet without fear. "You speak of your restless mind as if it were your enemy," the old monk said eventually, his words falling into the twilight like gentle rain. "But what if your mind is like this river, always moving, always changing, carrying both beautiful leaves and broken branches toward the sea?" The young monk felt something shift in his chest, like a door opening that he hadn't realized was closed. "The mistake we make," continued the elder, settling onto a moss-covered log as fireflies began their ancient dance in the gathering darkness, "is thinking that meditation means stopping the river. But rivers are not meant to be stopped. They are meant to be allowed, to be watched with the same accepting presence with which we watch clouds pass across the sky." As if summoned by his words, a family of deer appeared on the opposite bank, drinking from the river with unhurried grace. They were not fighting the water or trying to make it be different than it was. They simply drank what they needed and continued on their way. "The Buddha's great discovery," the old monk whispered, his voice nearly lost in the gentle sound of water over stones, "was not how to eliminate thoughts, but how to change his relationship with them. Like learning to watch this river without needing to direct its course, he learned to watch his mind without needing to control its contents." The young monk sat beside his teacher, feeling the day's last warmth rising from the stone beneath him. But how does one learn such acceptance? How does one stop fighting what is? The old monk was quiet for so long that the young student wondered if he had fallen asleep. But then, so softly it was almost part of the river song, came his reply. "By practicing kindness toward what is, just as it is. When the mind is restless, we say, 'Hello, restlessness, I see you.' When the heart is sad, we say, 'Hello, sadness. You are welcome here too.' We become like this river, flowing around obstacles instead of fighting them, carrying everything with equal grace." As full darkness settled around them like a familiar blanket, the old monk rose to his feet with the fluid movement of someone who had learned to carry his age lightly. "The peace you seek is not the absence of movement, young friend. It is the presence of love in the midst of all movement." They walked back to the monastery in comfortable silence, the path lit by starlight and the deeper illumination of understanding. The young monk's questions had not been answered so much as dissolved, like salt in warm water, leaving behind a taste of something both ordinary and infinitely precious. Years later, when the young monk had become old himself and his own students came with their restless seeking, he would remember that evening by the river. He would remember how wisdom had arrived, not as lightning splitting the sky, but as the gentle recognition that he had always been part of the flow, had always belonged to something larger than his small understanding got, and in the sharing of this memory, in the passing of this gift from heart to heart, the Buddha's teaching continued to flow like that ancient river, carrying each seeker toward the ocean of their own awakening, one gentle moment at a time. Asterisk, asterisk in the sanctuary of this quiet evening. As the world outside settles into its ancient rhythm of rest and renewal, we turn our attention inward like travelers who have walked many paths only to discover that the destination they sought was always within them, patient as buried treasure waiting to be uncovered by gentle hands. Close your eyes now, if you haven't already, and feel yourself sinking deeper into whatever supports you. Chair, bed, or floor, allowing gravity to hold you with the same unconditional embrace that the earth offers to all things. With each exhale, release a little more of the day's weight, letting it fall away like autumn leaves that have fulfilled their purpose, and now return to nourish the soil from which they came. This is the beginning of the inward journey that the Buddha discovered beneath the Bodhi tree. Not a journey that takes us away from ourselves, but one that brings us home to who we have always been beneath the layers of doing and becoming, achieving and striving. It is the pathless path that leads to the place you never left. Begin with your breath, that most intimate teacher who has been with you since your first moment of life and will accompany you to your last. But instead of trying to control or change your breathing, simply become curious about it, the way you might listen to a favorite piece of music or watch clouds drifting across an afternoon sky. Notice how each inhale arrives without your effort, how your body knows exactly what it needs, without consultation from your thinking mind. Feel how the breath finds its own rhythm, sometimes deeper, sometimes shallower, like ocean waves that follow laws more ancient than human understanding. With each breath, you become the stillness between thoughts, that spacious awareness that exists before the first thought of the day arises, that remains present after the last thought of the day dissolves. You are not your thoughts, dear friend, any more than the sky is the clouds that pass through it. You are the vast, open awareness in which all thoughts appear and disappear like visitors in an infinitely welcoming space. Notice now the sensations in your body, not to judge or change them, but to greet them with the same friendly curiosity you might offer to a cat that has wandered into your garden. Perhaps there is tension in your shoulders, carrying the invisible weight of responsibilities and concerns. Perhaps there is softness in your belly, or coolness in your hands, or the gentle pulse of your heart, beating its steady rhythm of aliveness. Allow each sensation to be exactly as it is, without needing to fix or improve anything. In this allowing, you discover the first secret of the Buddha's awakening, that peace comes not from having everything be different, but from learning to meet what is with such complete acceptance that resistance dissolves like sugar in warm tea, drifting deeper now, floating into presence like a leaf settling onto the surface of a perfectly still pond. Feel how awareness itself has no boundaries, no edges where you end and the world begins. In this moment, are you breathing, or is breath breathing you? Are you aware, or is awareness aware of itself through you? These are not questions to answer with your thinking mind, but mysteries to rest within like a child curled in the lap of awe. A beloved grandmother, safe to not know, safe to simply be held by something infinitely larger and more patient than understanding. The Buddha called this recognition of our true nature awakening, not because we become someone new, but because we remember who we have always been beneath the stories we tell ourselves about who we think we are. Like the sun that never stops shining even when clouds obscure its light, your essential nature of peace and love and boundless awareness is always present, always available, needing only the gentlest recognition to illuminate your world. Feel yourself now as vast as the night sky, spacious enough to hold all the stars of your experience without being diminished by any of them. Joy and sorrow, success and failure, love and loss, all of them arise and pass away in the infinite space of your being like weather patterns moving through an endless sky. This is the journey into the self that is no self, the discovery that what you truly are cannot be captured in any description, cannot be improved or damaged, cannot be gained or lost. You are the aware presence in which all of life unfolds, the conscious space in which every experience finds its home. Rest here now in this recognition, not as an achievement or attainment, but as a homecoming to what has never been absent. Like A wave recognizing it has always been ocean. Like a ray of sunlight, remembering it has always been the sun. Let yourself settle into the profound ordinariness of your own awakened nature. With each breath, you are not becoming more peaceful. You are recognizing the peace that you are. With each moment of awareness, you are not finding something new. You are uncovering what has always been present. Patient as earth beneath snow, constant as the space in which all things appear and disappear. This is the Buddha's greatest gift. Not a technique or practice to master, but an invitation to recognize what you already are, what you have never not been, what no circumstance can touch or time diminish. Rest in this knowing like a child resting in the arms of love itself, safe to let go of all effort, all seeking, all need to be anywhere other than here, anyone other than exactly who you are. The journey inward leads not to a destination, but to the recognition that you are already home, have always been home, will always be home in the heart of your own infinite being. Asterisk, asterisk, in the treasure house of Buddhist wisdom. There exist gentle surprises and hidden truths that sparkle like dewdrops on spider webs in the early morning light. So simple they might be overlooked, yet so profound they can shift our entire understanding of what it means to be alive. These are the secrets whispered between master and student in the quiet hours, the paradoxes that unlock doors we didn't know were closed. One such treasure is the story of the monk, who answered every question with a smile. Students would come from distant monasteries, carrying their burning philosophical queries like torches in the darkness, seeking his renowned wisdom. Master, they would ask, what is the meaning of suffering? He would smile. How does one achieve enlightenment? Another smile. What is the nature of reality? The same gentle, knowing smile. For years, this puzzled and even frustrated those who sought his teachings. Some left in anger, convinced he was mocking their sincere seeking. Others stayed, drawn by something inexplicable in that simple expression, a quality of presence that seemed to answer their questions more completely than any words ever could. Only later did his students understand that his smile was not withholding wisdom, but offering it completely. In that gentle expression lived the recognition that every question contains its own answer, that seeking and finding are not separate, that the peace they were looking for was already present in the very one who was asking the question. This is one of Buddhism's most beautiful secrets, that enlightenment is not an achievement, but a recognition, not a destination, but a way of seeing what has always been here. Like suddenly noticing that you've been wearing your glasses while searching for them. Awakening is often accompanied not by fanfare, but by gentle laughter at the cosmic joke of seeking what we already are. Another hidden gem sparkles in the teaching of the empty cup. A renowned scholar once visited a Zen master, eager to demonstrate his vast knowledge of Buddhist philosophy. As tea was served, the master began pouring into the scholar's cup. He poured and poured, even as the tea overflowed. Onto the table, then onto the floor. "Stop!" cried the scholar. "The cup is full. No more will go in." "Yes," said the master with twinkling eyes. "And how can I teach anything to someone who is already full of knowledge? Come back when your cup is empty." This gentle teaching reveals that wisdom enters not through accumulation, but through emptiness, not the emptiness of lack, but the spacious emptiness of availability, like a clear sky that can hold all weather, like silence that can hold all sound. The Buddha himself embodied this principle, spending years unlearning everything he thought he knew before discovering what could not be learned, only recognized. Perhaps the most surprising truth hidden in Buddhist teaching is that there is nothing to attain and nowhere to go. The very seeking that brings us to spiritual practice must eventually be released, like a ladder that has served its purpose and can now be put aside. This is why the Buddha, in his final teaching, encouraged his students not to take his word for anything, but to be lamps unto themselves, Consider the paradox of the finger pointing at the moon. The Buddha's teachings are like that finger, helpful for indicating direction, but not to be confused with the destination itself. Many students spend their lives studying the finger, becoming experts on its angle and position, while never turning their gaze to the moon it indicates. The moon, in this gentle metaphor, is your own awakened nature, always present, always shining, always available to direct experience. There's a delightful riddle that emerged from the Buddhist tradition. What is the sound of one hand clapping? This is not a puzzle to be solved with logic, but an invitation to step outside the ordinary mind that thinks in terms of dualities, self and other, question and answer, seeker and sought. The sound of one hand clapping is the sound of your own nature expressing itself without opposition, without the need for anything outside itself to be complete. In the gentle darkness of this evening hour, these paradoxes and riddles are not meant to confuse, but to liberate, to free us from the tyranny of having to understand everything, to release us into the spacious not knowing where true wisdom lives. Like cones designed not for the thinking mind, but for the awakening heart, they point us beyond concepts toward direct experience of what cannot be captured in words. The Buddha's most radical teaching, hidden in plain sight throughout all his words, is that you are already what you seek to become. The peace you long for is the peace you are. The love you yearn to find is the love looking through your eyes right now. The wisdom you hope to attain is the awareness aware of these very words. This recognition often comes not with lightning and thunder, but with the gentle surprise of a child who suddenly realizes they've been looking for the toy they were holding all along. It's accompanied not by pride or achievement, but by a tender laughter at the cosmic game of hide and seek we've been playing with ourselves. Rest now in these gentle mysteries, letting them work on you the way moonlight works on a garden, not forcing anything to grow, but creating the conditions where natural unfolding can occur. You need not solve these riddles or understand these paradoxes. Simply let them be companions in the spacious darkness, friendly presences that remind you that wisdom often wears the clothes of simplicity, and the most profound truths are often the most obvious ones we've learned to overlook. In the tradition of that smiling monk. Perhaps the answer to all our questions is already present in this moment of gentle awareness, this breath, this heartbeat, this inexplicable aliveness that animates every cell of your being. Perhaps the answer is not something to find, but something to be, not something to achieve, but something to recognize that you already are. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. In the soft embrace of this quiet hour, as your body settles deeper into rest and your mind begins to release its hold on the day's concerns, we drift into one of the Buddha's most tender teachings, his understanding of suffering not as punishment or failure, but as the birthplace of compassion, the fertile ground where wisdom grows like lotus flowers blooming in muddy waters. Imagine, if you will, a mountain lake at dawn, its surface disturbed by gentle ripples from a fish jumping circles, expanding outward in perfect symmetry before returning to stillness. This is how the Buddha saw our human experience. Moments of disturbance arising in the natural peace of our being, not as enemies to be fought, but as temporary movements in an essentially tranquil nature. The Sanskrit word for suffering, dukkha, carries within it the image of a wheel that doesn't quite fit its axle, not broken, not wrong, but slightly off-center, creating a subtle wobble with each revolution. This is the genius of the Buddha's insight. Our pain comes not from life being fundamentally flawed, but from our attempts to find perfect stability in a world that is beautifully, naturally impermanent. Picture yourself as a child at the beach, building sandcastles with the complete absorption that only children possess. Hour after hour you shape and perfect your creation, adorning it with shells and seaweed, your heart full of pride and joy. Then the tide comes in, as tides always do, and your masterpiece dissolves back into the ocean from which the sand came. The child's tears at the loss of the sandcastle are real and valid. Yet there's something both tragic and beautiful in the expectation that what is made of sand and built at the edge of the ocean could remain forever unchanged. This is the gentle nature of our human suffering. We love what is temporary as if it were eternal. We grasp at joy as if it could be held permanently in our closed fists. But here lies the Buddha's most revolutionary understanding. This very tendency to cling, this beautiful and painful human habit of trying to hold on to what flows, is not a mistake we need to correct, but a doorway we're invited to walk through. Our suffering becomes our teacher. Our pain becomes our guide toward a deeper understanding of love itself. Consider how a river loves the stones in its bed, not by holding them in place, but by flowing around them, shaping them gently over time, while allowing them to be exactly what they are. The river's love is expressed through movement, through letting go, through the endless willingness to release each moment as it passes. This is the love that the Buddha discovered in his own heart, not possessive, not controlling, but as natural and flowing as water itself. When we truly understand this, something miraculous happens. The very experiences that once caused us to contract with resistance begin to open us with compassion. The job loss that felt like the end of the world becomes the beginning of an unexpected adventure. The relationship that ended in heartbreak becomes the teacher that shows us how much love we actually carry. The illness that frightened us becomes the reminder to cherish each day as the gift it truly is. This is not about becoming indifferent to life's pleasures and pains, but about learning to hold them both with such spacious love that neither joy nor sorrow can knock us off balance. Like an ancient tree that bends with storms but remains rooted, we learn to be flexible without losing our center, responsive without losing our peace. The Buddha often spoke of the middle way, not as a compromise between extremes, but as the path that flows naturally when we stop fighting against the current of life. It's the way of the wise mother who loves her children enough to let them learn from their own mistakes, who holds them close while teaching them to fly in this gentle darkness. Feel how your own heart has been shaped by both joy and sorrow, how your capacity for love has been deepened, not in spite of your pain, but because of your willingness to remain open in the midst of it. Every loss has taught you the preciousness of what remains. Every ending has shown you that love itself never ends, only changes form, like water becoming vapor, then rain and river, then ocean. The peace that the Buddha discovered is not the absence of waves on the lake of consciousness, but the recognition that you are the lake itself, vast enough to hold all weather, deep enough to remain unmoved by surface storms, clear enough to reflect both moonlight and shadows with equal serenity. This peace doesn't require perfect circumstances or the elimination of all difficulties. It arises naturally when we stop trying to manage the unmanageable and instead learn to rest in the part of us that remains, untouched by life's constant changes, the aware presence that watches joy come and go, that witnesses sorrow arise and pass away, that remains constant like the space in which all experiences appear. Tonight, as sleep begins to call to you like a gentle mother singing lullabies, allow yourself to rest in this deeper understanding. Your struggles are not obstacles to peace, but pathways to it. Your questions are not problems to solve, but doorways to mystery. Your very humanness, with all its beautiful imperfections, is not something to transcend, but something to embrace. With the same unconditional love that holds stars in their courses and seasons in their cycles, the Buddha's teaching whispers to us across the centuries. Peace is not something you achieve, but something you are. Not something you find, but something you recognize. Not something perfect, but something perfectly willing to be imperfect. Like this moment, like this breath, like this tender human heart that continues to beat with courage even in the face of uncertainty. Rest now in this understanding, letting it settle into your bones like warmth from a fireplace on a winter evening. knowing that true peace and deepest suffering are not opposites, but partners in the dance of awakening, each one teaching you something essential about the infinite. Capacity of love, asterisk, asterisk, in the gentle spaces between thoughts, where silence rests like snow on mountain peaks, we discover perhaps the most beautiful and challenging of all the Buddha's teachings, the art of letting go. Not the forced release of clenched fists, not the resigned surrender of defeat, but the natural opening that happens when we understand that what we've been holding on to was never actually in our grasp. To begin with, picture a child at a carnival, clutching a handful of colorful balloons. One by one, without the child noticing, the balloons slip free and float toward the sky. At first, there's panic, reaching and grasping, trying to pull them back down. But then, as the balloons rise higher, becoming small dots of color against the vast blue, something shifts. The child's face turns from distress to wonder, watching the balloons dance with the clouds, suddenly understanding that their beauty was never in being held, but in being free to fly. This is the paradox at the heart of letting go, that by releasing our grip on what we love, we often discover a deeper, more spacious way of loving. The Buddha learned this not through philosophical study, but through lived experience, sitting beneath that ancient tree, watching his own attachments fall away like autumn leaves, each release revealing more of the sky that had always been there. Consider how the ocean holds the moon, not by grasping or possessing, but by providing a surface clear enough for reflection. When storms disturb the water, the moon's image fragments and disappears, but the ocean doesn't chase after it or try to hold it steady. It simply returns to stillness, and the moon appears again, perfect and whole. This is the letting go that the Buddha discovered, not a loss, but a return to the natural state that allows all beauty to be reflected clearly back in the soft dimness of this evening hour. Feel into your own experiences of letting go. Perhaps there was a beloved pet whose death taught you that love doesn't end when form changes. Perhaps there was a dream you pursued so tightly that it could only come true when you loosened your grip enough for it to breathe. Perhaps there was a person you loved so much that the relationship could only flourish when you stopped trying to control its shape. These moments of release, though they may have felt like endings, were actually beginnings, doorways into a more spacious way of being that can hold both presence and absence, both form and emptiness, both having and not having with equal grace. Like a master archer who draws the bowstring back fully before releasing the arrow, sometimes we must pull away from what we want in order to allow it to reach its true destination. Asterisk, asterisk. The Buddha spoke of non-attachment, but this is perhaps the most misunderstood of all his teachings. It doesn't mean becoming cold or indifferent, doesn't mean not caring or not loving fully. Rather, it means learning to love so completely that we can trust our love to continue even when its object changes form, even when the person moves away, even when the dream transforms into something we hadn't expected. Think of how a garden loves its flowers, providing soil and water and sunlight, tending with devotion and care, yet allowing each bloom to follow its natural cycle from bud to flower to seed to soil again. The garden doesn't try to keep the roses from fading or the spring bulbs from sleeping through winter. It loves through all seasons, understanding that the deepest love is the one that serves life's natural rhythm rather than fighting against it. This is the letting go that heals, not the bitter release of resentment, not the desperate abandonment of hope, but the wise release that comes from understanding the difference between love and attachment, between caring and clinging, between holding space for someone and trying to hold them in place. As you rest here in the growing quietude of night, notice what in your own life might be asking for this quality of release. Perhaps it's an old hurt that you've been carrying like a stone in your pocket, worn smooth by years of handling, but still weighing down your movement. Perhaps it's a version of yourself that no longer fits. Like clothes from childhood that you've outgrown but haven't yet given away. The art of letting go is learned not through force, but through tenderness, not through pushing away, but through opening so wide that there's room for everything to be present and everything to be free. It's like learning to hold water in cupped hands. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it runs through your fingers. But hold your hands gently open, and it rests there like a gift, reflecting light. Sometimes letting go looks like forgiveness. Not condoning harmful actions, but releasing the expectation that the past could have been different than it was. Sometimes it looks like acceptance, not passive resignation, but active embrace of what is, even when what is includes difficulty or loss. Sometimes it looks like trust, not blind faith, but the deeper knowing that life is unfolding exactly as it needs to, even when we can't see the larger pattern. The Buddha's great insight was that what we take to be solid is actually fluid. What we experience as permanent is actually in constant flux. What we try to grasp is actually already flowing freely. When we align ourselves with this natural flow, instead of fighting against it, we discover that we haven't lost anything real. We've only released the illusion that we could hold on to what was meant to move in the Buddhist understanding. Letting go is not a single event, but a moment-by-moment practice, like breathing out to make room for the next breath in. Each exhale is a small death, a mini letting go that makes life possible. Each inhale is a small birth, a mini receiving that accepts what life offers in this moment. Rest now in this rhythm of receiving and releasing, holding and letting go, trusting that your heart knows how to love in this flowing way, how to care without clinging, how to remain devoted while staying free. Like waves that embrace the shore and then return to the vastness of the ocean, you can learn to love fully and release completely, finding in this dance the very peace that the Buddha discovered beneath his tree of awakening. The art of letting go is ultimately the art of coming home, not to a place or person or circumstance, but to the natural spaciousness of your own being, vast enough to hold everything that comes and everything that goes with equal tenderness, equal grace. Asterisk. In the hushed cathedral of this evening hour, as consciousness begins its gentle descent toward the mysterious realm of sleep, we approach one of humanity's most profound questions. What does it truly mean to awaken? Not the awakening from nighttime dreams that comes with morning light, but the deeper awakening that the Buddha discovered in those pre-dawn hours beneath the Bodhi tree, when the last star was fading and the first bird had not yet sung. Imagine, if you will, that you have spent your entire life living in a house with all the curtains drawn, moving carefully through familiar rooms lit only by artificial light. You know every piece of furniture by touch, every creaking floorboard by sound, and you believe this dim, careful existence is simply the nature of reality. Then one day, perhaps by accident, perhaps guided by an inexplicable urge, you pull back just one curtain, and sunlight floods in, revealing not a different house, but the same house transformed, alive with colors you had no words for, details you had never noticed, a beauty that had always been there waiting patiently to be seen. This is awakening as the Buddha understood it, not the acquisition of something new, but the recognition of what has always been present. Not a journey to a distant destination, but the sudden realization that you never left home. Not becoming someone different, but seeing clearly who you have always been beneath the layers of confusion and seeking. The word Buddha itself means the awakened one, but in the gentle darkness of contemplation, we might ask, awakened from what? Awakened to what? The Buddha would say we awaken from the dream of separation, the convincing illusion that we are isolated beings struggling alone in a hostile universe, cut off from the source of love and peace that we spend our lives seeking outside ourselves. Picture a wave on the ocean, rising high and proud, believing itself to be separate from the sea that surrounds it. The wave struggles to maintain its individual form, fighting against other waves, competing for space and recognition, fearing the moment when it will crash against the shore and cease to exist. But awakening comes in the instant when the wave recognizes that it has never been separate from the ocean, that its very substance, its essential nature, its deepest identity is the sea itself. The wave doesn't disappear in this recognition. It simply stops struggling against its own nature. This is the awakening that transforms suffering into compassion, fear into love, restlessness into peace. Not because external circumstances change, but because our relationship to all circumstances undergoes a fundamental shift. We discover that we are not victims of life, but expressions of it. Not separate from the dance, but movements within it. Not seeking love, but love itself, seeking to know its own nature through the unique perspective of this individual life. In the soft quietude that surrounds you now, feel into your own moments of awakening. They may have been brief, so natural you barely noticed them. Perhaps it was a moment in nature when the boundaries between you and the landscape seemed to dissolve, when you felt yourself as part of something infinitely larger and more beautiful than your usual sense of self. Perhaps it was holding a newborn baby and suddenly knowing, beyond all doubt, that love is the fundamental force that weaves the universe together. Perhaps it was a moment of great loss when in the depths of grief, you touched something unbreakable and eternal within yourself. These glimpses are not accidents or anomalies, but remembrances of your true nature, briefly shining through the clouds of ordinary consciousness. The Buddha's great gift was not creating these moments of clarity, but pointing out that the awareness in which they arise is always present, always available, always here, as close as your own breathing, as intimate as your own heartbeat. Awakening, in the Buddhist understanding, is not a permanent state that some special people achieve while others remain forever asleep. It is more like learning to recognize a friend's face in a crowd. Once you know what to look for, you can spot them anywhere, even when they're wearing different clothes or standing in shadow. Once you recognize the taste of your own awakened nature, you begin to notice it everywhere, in the pause between thoughts, in the space that holds all sounds, in the awareness that is reading these very words. The beautiful paradox is that awakening is both the most ordinary and the most extraordinary thing possible. Ordinary because it requires nothing you don't already have, asks you to go nowhere you haven't already been, invites you to become nothing other than what you are. Extraordinary because it reveals that what you are is consciousness itself, aware, and awake and infinitely creative, temporarily playing at being a separate self, but never actually limited by that role. This recognition doesn't eliminate the personality or make the individual disappear like smoke. Rather, it's like an actor remembering they are not actually the character they're portraying on stage, but they can continue to play the role with even greater skill and joy, no longer identified with the character's struggles, no longer believing. The stage drama is ultimately real. When the Buddha spoke of the end of suffering, he wasn't promising that awakened beings never experience pain or challenge. Bodies still age, loved ones still die, difficulties still arise. But the suffering that comes from resistance to life's natural flow, from the desperate attempt to make permanent what is temporary, from the fundamental misunderstanding of who and what we are, this suffering can indeed end. In its place arises what the Buddhists call compassion, not pity or sympathy, but the natural response of love when it recognizes itself everywhere. Just as your left hand would never hesitate to help your right hand if it were injured, awakened consciousness naturally extends care and kindness to all expressions of life, knowing them to be movements of the same essential being. Rest now in the possibility that awakening is not something you need to achieve in some distant future, but something you can recognize right here, right now, in this very moment of aware presence. You are not a person who sometimes has moments of awareness. You are awareness itself, temporarily focused through the lens of a particular personality, like sunlight streaming through a stained glass window, taking on colors and patterns while remaining essentially light. The deepest sleep and the deepest awakening both happen in the same place, in the infinite space of consciousness that you are. As you drift toward rest, feel yourself not losing consciousness, but returning to its source, not going to sleep, but coming home to the vast, peaceful awareness that dreams all dreams and wakes from all dreams, while remaining forever itself, pure, aware, and free. Asterisk, asterisk, in the velvet darkness of this sacred hour, when the veil between waking and sleeping grows thin as gossamer and the gossamer, heart opens like a night-blooming flower. We arrive at the deepest truth that the Buddha discovered in his moments of profound awakening. A truth so simple it can be missed, so obvious it can be overlooked, so intimate it can only be recognized, never grasped. This truth cannot be captured in words, yet words can point toward it like fingers pointing at the moon. It cannot be understood by the thinking mind, yet it can be known more directly than your own reflection in a mirror. It is closer than close, more present than presence itself, and yet we spend lifetimes seeking it in distant places, convinced it must be hidden somewhere beyond our reach. Imagine in the soft theater of your imagination a person who has lost their glasses and spends hours searching frantically through drawers and under cushions, growing increasingly frustrated and desperate. The entire time, the glasses rest gently on top of their head, so close that they cannot see them, so obvious that they remain invisible. This is humanity's relationship with the deepest truth. We are what we seek. We contain what we crave. We are already what we dream of becoming. The Buddha called this recognition by many names: Buddha nature, original mind, the deathless, element, the unconditioned. But perhaps the most beautiful name is simply suckness or thisness. It points to the miraculous ordinariness of what is actually here, right now, before any story is told about it, before any judgment is made about whether it should be different. In this moment, as you rest in whatever position supports you, feel the simple fact of being alive, not the complex narrative about your life, not the endless commentary about what's wrong or right about your circumstances, but the raw, immediate, undeniable fact that existence is happening. Breath is breathing. Heart is beating. Awareness is aware. Aliveness is aliving through this form you call yourself. This is the deepest truth, not a philosophy to believe, not a concept to understand, but the lived reality that is already fully present, already completely accomplished, already perfect exactly as it is. The Buddha's awakening was not the attainment of something new, but the dropping away of everything false, leaving only what had never been absent, the pure fact of being, aware and awake and whole, like a sculptor who doesn't create the statue, but simply removes the excess marble to reveal what was always there. Spiritual practice doesn't manufacture enlightenment, but clears away the beliefs and identities and stories that obscure our natural radiance. What emerges is not an improved version of who you were, but who you have always been when you weren't trying to be anybody in particular. This truth is what mystics throughout history have called the kingdom of heaven, the Tao, Brahman, the self, pure consciousness. Not because these are different truths, but because truth itself is so beyond language that every attempt to name it can only gesture toward the unnamed essence that you are. Feel. In this moment of gentle reflection, how? You know that you exist without having to think about it. You don't need to prove to yourself that you are aware. Awareness is self-evident, immediate, intimate. This knowing awareness, which is closer to you than your thoughts, more essential than your personality, more constant than your emotions. This is what the Buddha pointed to as our true nature. It has no beginning and no end, no birth and no death, no improvement and no decline. It is what watches thoughts come and go without being touched by their content, what remains present through all moods and experiences, without being changed by any of them. It is the space in which your entire life story unfolds while remaining. Itself spacious, clear, and free. This awareness is reading these words right now. It has been present for every moment of your life, from your first breath to this very instant. It will be present for your last breath, and what it is cannot be. Born and therefore cannot die. This is not a belief or hope, but the most obvious, undeniable fact of your existence. You are aware, and awareness itself is deathless, timeless, infinite. The deepest teaching of Buddhism is that this awareness which you are is not separate from the awareness that animated the Buddha, that moves through every living being, that is the very ground of existence itself. The same consciousness that looks through your eyes, looked through his eyes, that beats your heart beats in every heart, that dreams your dreams is dreaming all dreams. This recognition dissolves the fundamental illusion of separation that creates all suffering. When you know yourself as consciousness itself, temporarily focused through this unique perspective, but essentially one with all perspective, how can there be ultimate conflict? How can there be final loneliness? How can there be permanent dissatisfaction? Wave has remembered it as ocean. The ray of light has remembered it is sun. The character in the dream has remembered it is the dreamer. This is awakening, not an achievement or attainment, but a recognition so obvious that it can only be met with wonder, so simple that it can only be greeted with laughter, so natural that it feels like coming home to where you never left. Rest. Now in this deepest truth, not as something to understand, but as something to be. You are not a person who has consciousness. You are consciousness appearing as a person. You are not someone seeking peace. You are peace itself, temporarily, focused through a seeking mind. You are not a human being having a spiritual experience. You are spiritual being, aware and awake and infinite, having a beautifully temporary human experience. This is what the Buddha saw in those moments of profound stillness beneath the Bodhi tree, what he spent the rest of his life pointing toward with infinite compassion, the recognition that what you seek, you are. What you long for, you already possess. What you hope to become, you have never not been. Sleep tonight in this understanding, letting it settle into your bones like morning dew settling on rose petals, knowing that whether you are awake or asleep, dreaming or dreamless, this deepest truth remains constant. You are the aware presence in which all experience arises and passes away, the eternal witness, the deathless essence, the Buddha nature that has always been awake, always been free, always been exactly what it is in this very moment. Asterisk, asterisk, in the sacred geography of awakening, consciousness flows like an ancient river that has been moving through the landscape of being since time began its first whisper. Tonight, as your breathing deepens and your body settles into the earth's embrace, we follow this river upstream toward its source, discovering that what we thought was a journey outward was always a journey home to the vastness we have never left. Picture, in the soft cinema of inner vision, a mountain river beginning as a tiny spring high among the peaks, crystal clear water bubbling up from some mysterious underground source. This is pure awareness emerging into manifestation. Simple, clear, without agenda or destination, simply flowing because flowing is its nature. As it descends the mountainside, it gathers other streams, grows wider and deeper, carrying the minerals and stories of all the lands it touches while remaining essentially water, essentially flow, essentially itself. This is the river of your own consciousness, dear friend. It began as pure awareness and has been flowing through the landscape of your life, gathering experiences like a river gathers tributaries. Moments of joy merging with moments of sorrow, insights joining with confusions, love streams mixing with fear streams, all of them adding to the fullness of the flow, while the essential nature of the river remains unchanged. The Buddha understood that consciousness is like this river, not a thing or object that can be possessed, but a flowing process that cannot be stopped or controlled, only recognized and trusted. When we try to dam the river of awareness, to make it hold still so we can examine it or direct its course, we create the suffering of stagnation. When we learn to flow with its natural movement, to trust its ancient wisdom about which way leads to the sea, we discover the peace that comes from alignment with our deepest nature. Asterisk, asterisk. Feel now how thoughts arise in your awareness, like leaves falling onto the surface of this inner river. Some thoughts are golden autumn leaves, carrying beauty and wisdom. Others are broken twigs, fragments of worry or regret. But the river doesn't discriminate. It carries all offerings with equal grace, never holding on to any of them, never rejecting any of them, simply allowing them to be part of the flow while remaining essentially pure, essentially moving, essentially free. This is the practice the Buddha discovered. Not to stop thoughts or eliminate experiences, but to recognize yourself as the river rather than the debris floating on its surface. You are not your thoughts any more than the river is the leaves it carries. You are not your emotions any more than the river is the stones that rest in its bed. You are the flowing awareness in which all thoughts and emotions appear and disappear, like weather patterns moving through an infinite sky. Above this inner landscape, stars begin to appear as consciousness settles into its natural clarity. Each star is a moment of understanding, a point of light in the vast darkness of mystery. Some nights the sky is full of stars, insights, and recognitions illuminating the landscape of being like a field of diamonds scattered on black velvet. Other nights clouds cover the stars, and we walk by faith rather than sight, trusting that the lights of wisdom still shine behind the veils of confusion or difficulty. The Buddha taught that understanding comes not all at once, like sunrise, but gradually like stars, emerging one by one as daylight fades. First, one insight appears, perhaps the recognition that happiness cannot be found in accumulating experiences. Then another, the understanding that peace comes not from controlling circumstances, but from accepting what is. Slowly, quietly, the sky of consciousness fills with these points of light, each one both complete in itself and part of a larger constellation of wisdom out tonight. As you rest in this gentle darkness, notice the stars of your own understanding beginning to appear. Perhaps you recognize, without needing to think about it, that you are more than your thoughts. You are the spacious awareness in which thoughts arise. Perhaps you sense, beyond doubt or belief, that you are connected to something infinitely larger and more loving than your individual story. Perhaps you simply know, with the certainty of breathing, that this moment is perfect, exactly as it is, requiring nothing from you but presence. These are not achievements to be proud of, but natural recognitions that emerge when the mind grows quiet enough to see what has always been shining. Like stars that don't struggle to give light, but simply are light. These understandings don't require effort to maintain. They are expressions of your essential nature becoming visible to itself. Between the stars, vast expanses of space hold the entire cosmic dance in perfect stillness. This is the space of your own awareness, not empty in the sense of lacking anything, but empty in the sense of being so full, so complete, so whole that nothing can be added to it, and nothing can be taken away. This spacious emptiness is pregnant with infinite possibility, like the silence between notes that makes music possible, like the canvas that allows a painting to exist. The Buddha often pointed to this space-like nature of mind, this aware emptiness. That is the ground of all experience. It cannot be seen because it is what sees. It cannot be known as an object because it is the knowing subject. It cannot be found because it is never lost, cannot be achieved because it is never absent, cannot be improved because it is already perfect. As consciousness continues its gentle descent toward sleep, feel yourself not losing awareness, but returning to its source. like a river flowing back to the ocean from which it came. The boundaries between dreamer and dream, between awareness and its contents, between self and universe, begin to soften like snow melting in warm spring rain. This is the deepest meditation, not a practice you do, but a recognition of what you are. Not a state you achieve, but a nature you have never not been. Like a star that doesn't try to shine, but simply radiates its essential nature. You don't need to become conscious. You are consciousness itself, aware and awake and infinitely present, temporarily dreaming the dream of being a separate seeker, while never actually being separate from what you seek. In this recognition, the river of consciousness flows peacefully toward the ocean of being, carrying with it all the experiences of this day, all the lessons of this lifetime, all the love that has moved through this heart, not as burdens to be carried, but as offerings to be released into the vastness that lovingly receives all rivers, all stories, all forms of awakening, with the same infinite acceptance that holds. Stars in their courses and seasons in their cycles not rest now as both the river and the ocean, both the star and the space that holds it, both the seeker and the sought, knowing that in the deepest sleep and the clearest awakening, you remain what you have always been, consciousness aware of itself, love knowing itself, peace resting in its own eternal nature. Asterisk, asterisk, in the cathedral quiet of deep night, when the world has exhaled its last breath of daylight and settled into the profound stillness that exists before the first bird dreams of dawn, we turn our attention to the mountains of consciousness, those vast, ancient peaks of awareness that rise unchanging through all weather, all seasons, all the passing storms of experience. Imagine, if you will, standing at the base of a mountain so tall its peak disappears into clouds, so ancient that it has watched civilizations rise and fall like flowers blooming and fading in its shadow. This mountain has been shaped by millions of years of wind and rain, earthquake and glacier, yet something in its essential nature remains untouched by all this change. A quality of presence so fundamental, so unshakable that it seems to exist outside of time itself. This is the mountain of your own being, dear friend, the vast, stable presence of awareness that has remained constant through every phase of your life. The mountain doesn't try to be permanent. Permanence is simply its nature. It doesn't struggle to remain unmoved. Stillness is what it is. In the same way, the deepest part of your consciousness doesn't need to seek peace. It is peace, has always been peace, will always be peace regardless of what storms may rage across its surface. The Buddha often spoke of Buddha nature as being like a mountain, not in the sense of being rigid or unchanging, but in the quality of profound stability that can weather all conditions without losing its essential character. Your thoughts are like clouds that form and dissolve around this mountain of consciousness. Your emotions are like weather patterns that move across its face. Your experiences are like the changing seasons that paint its slopes with different colors, yet the mountain itself remains aware, present, fundamentally unaffected by what passes over and around it. Feel, in this moment of gentle settling, how you have been this mountain all your life without perhaps recognizing it. Every memory you carry, from earliest childhood to this very instant, has been held in the same aware presence. The consciousness that experienced your first day of school is the same consciousness reading these words now. It has grown in understanding, deepened in wisdom, expanded in compassion, but in its essential nature, in its capacity to be aware, to be present, to be, it has remained constant as a mountain, faithful as sunrise. This recognition is one of the most profound gifts of Buddhist teaching, the understanding that what you truly are cannot be damaged by life's difficulties, cannot be diminished by failures, cannot be lost through changes in circumstance. Like a mountain that remains itself whether clouds cover its peak or clear skies reveal its summit, your essential nature remains whole and complete regardless of your temporary experiences. No. As consciousness continues its gentle descent toward the realm of dreams, picture moonlight falling on still water, perhaps a mountain lake so perfectly clear that it reflects the moon as purely as a mirror, so still that the reflection becomes indistinguishable from the moon itself. This is the quality of awakened awareness, so clear, so still, so receptive that it perfectly reflects reality without distortion, without commentary, without the ripples of judgment or desire that usually disturb the surface of the mind. Moon doesn't try to be reflected in the water, and the water doesn't effort to reflect the moon. When conditions are right, when the water is still and clear, reflection happens naturally, effortlessly, perfectly. In the same way, when the mind becomes still through gentle acceptance of what is, when the heart becomes clear through the practice of loving kindness, the truth reflects itself spontaneously in consciousness without any doing or achieving required. This moonlight on water is perhaps the most beautiful metaphor for the Buddha's enlightenment. Not a dramatic transformation, not a supernatural achievement, but the natural result of consciousness becoming so transparent, so still, so accepting that truth can shine through it without obstruction. The water doesn't become the moon, yet in perfect conditions, it's impossible to say where moon ends and reflection begins. Feel how this same quality exists in your own awareness right now. In this moment of quiet reception, notice how consciousness naturally reflects whatever arises within it. Sounds appear in awareness like moonlight on water, clearly present, perfectly reflected, yet not disturbing the essential stillness of what you are. Sensations arise and pass away like gentle ripples that briefly distort the reflection before settling back into clarity. Even thoughts, those seemingly solid and important mental formations, are revealed in this stillness to be more like dreams of the mountain, temporary formations of consciousness that appear and dissolve within the vast space of awareness like morning mist that seems substantial from a distance, but proves to be mostly empty space when you move through it. The Buddha's great discovery was that this mountain-like stability and water-like clarity are not states you need to achieve, but qualities you already embody. You don't need to become still. You are stillness temporarily animated by movement. You don't need to become clear. You are clarity temporarily clouded by thoughts. You don't need to become peaceful. You are peace temporarily experiencing the adventure of apparent unrest. This understanding allows for a profound relaxation, a letting go so complete that it includes not trying to let go. Like moonlight that doesn't cling to the water it illuminates, like mountains that don't grasp at their own permanence, you can learn to rest in your own nature without needing to hold on to it or maintain it through effort. In the deepest teachings of Buddhism, enlightenment is sometimes called the pathless path, because it leads not somewhere else, but to where you already are, reveals not something hidden, but what has always been obvious, uncovers not a new self, but the self you have never not been. It's like suddenly realizing you've been looking for your glasses while wearing them, or searching for a word that's been on the tip of your tongue all along. As sleep begins to call to you with the gentle insistence of gravity, allow yourself to rest as both the mountain and the moonlight, the unchanging awareness that witnesses all change, the still presence that holds all movement, the peaceful nature that underlies all experience. Let consciousness settle like moonlight on water, naturally clear, effortlessly reflective, requiring nothing but the simplest willingness to be what you already are. In dreams and in waking, in meditation and in activity, in this life and beyond. This life, you remain what you have always been, the aware mountain of being, the clear water of consciousness, the gentle moonlight of love, reflecting itself in countless forms, on never being limited by any of them, never being separate from the source of its own radiance. In the gentle embrace of this sacred hour, as our journey through the Buddha's wisdom draws to its natural close like a river reaching the vast ocean of peace, We pause to gather the gifts we have received along this ancient path of awakening. Like a traveler who has walked through many landscapes and now sits by the evening fire, reflecting on the day's discoveries, we rest in the profound simplicity of what we have remembered together. What have we found in these quiet hours of exploration? Not new information to be stored away, not concepts to be grasped by the thinking mind, but the gentle recognition of what has always been present, the awareness that reads these words, the peace that underlies all seeking, the love that moves. Through every breath like wind through leaves, invisible yet undeniably real dot, we have walked with the young Prince Siddhartha as he questioned the nature of existence in moonlit gardens, feeling the same questions arising in our own hearts across the centuries. We have sat with the Buddha beneath the Bodhi tree, discovering that awakening is not an achievement, but a recognition, not a destination, but a homecoming to what we have never left. We have learned that suffering is not our enemy, but our teacher, pointing always toward what we have not yet learned to release. Through ancient stories and timeless metaphors, we have remembered that we are not separate drops trying to find the ocean, but the ocean itself, temporarily dreaming of being individual waves. We have recognized that consciousness flows like an eternal river, carrying all experiences with equal grace, while remaining essentially pure, essentially free. We have felt ourselves as mountains of awareness, unchanging through all weather, and as still water reflecting the moonlight of truth without effort or strain. These are not merely beautiful ideas, but lived realities that can transform every moment of ordinary life. Tomorrow, when you wake to whatever circumstances await you, you can remember that you are the aware presence in which all experiences arise, neither defined by success nor diminished by failure, neither enhanced by pleasure nor damaged by pain. You are the spacious sky in which all weather passes, the gentle witness to the endless dance of form and emptiness. The Buddha's teaching, shared across 2,500 years through countless hearts and voices, whispers to us still, you are already what you seek. You already possess what you long for. You already are what you hope to become. This is not consolation or philosophy, but the most practical truth imaginable, the recognition that can transform any moment from seeking into finding, from absence into presence, from fear into love. As your breathing continues its ancient rhythm, deeper now with each exhale. Feel how this wisdom settles into your bones, like water soaking into thirsty earth. You need not remember every word or concept from our journey together. The deepest teachings work like seeds planted in fertile soil. They will sprout and grow in their own perfect timing, bearing fruit in ways you cannot imagine from this perspective of planting. Let your body release completely now into whatever supports it, trusting the earth to hold you, as it has held countless beings before you, and will hold countless more after you have passed through this temporary form. Feel your muscles softening like snow melting in spring warmth, your breath becoming as natural and effortless as waves lapping at the shore of consciousness. The Buddha's final teaching, spoken to his students as he prepared to leave his physical form, was this: be lamps unto yourselves, not because you are alone, but because the light you seek is already shining within you, requiring only the gentlest recognition to illuminate your world. You are not a seeker who sometimes finds moments of peace. You are peace itself, temporarily focused through the lens of a seeking mind, like sunlight streaming through colored glass while remaining essentially light. Thank you, dear friend, for sharing this quiet path with me tonight. Thank you for bringing your own unique presence to this ancient wisdom, for allowing these words to find a home in your heart, for trusting enough to rest in the mystery of what cannot be grasped, but can always be recognized. Your willingness to pause, to listen, to open to something deeper than the mind's constant commentary is itself a gift to the world. One more being choosing presence over distraction, peace over chaos, love over fear. As sleep begins to call, To you with the irresistible gentleness of a mother's lullaby, know that you carry within you all the wisdom of the Buddha, all the compassion of countless awakened beings, all the peace that has ever been realized by any human heart. It is not separate from you, not outside you, not something you must earn or achieve. It is what you are, have always been, will always be, the deathless essence that dreams all dreams while remaining forever awake. Wherever you rest your head tonight, in palace or humble dwelling, in comfort or in difficulty, surrounded by loved ones or in solitude, may peace find you there. May the Dharma light your dreams with gentle understanding. May you wake tomorrow with the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you belong here, that your life is sacred, that you are held by love beyond measure. May all beings everywhere discover the Buddha nature that is their birthright. May all hearts open to the peace that passeth understanding. May all seekers recognize that what they seek is what they are, and rest finally in the profound ordinariness of their own awakened nature. Good night, dear friend. Rest well in the arms of the infinite. Sleep deeply in the embrace of your own true self. And when morning comes, may you greet it not as a seeker still searching, but as love itself, aware and awake and ready to dance once more in the endless play of consciousness, discovering its own beauty through countless forms. Be well. Be at peace. Be what you have always been, the Buddha heart, awakened and free.